Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And now we'll begin the technology session 3, food and agriculture. First of all, I would like to introduce the moderator for this session, Mr. Vali Musa, ICEF Steering Committee, Deputy Chairperson of the Presidential Climate Change Commission, former President, International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. And now I would like to ask Mr. Musa to moderate this session. So please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everybody. And konnichiwa. We have a very interesting selection of speakers here today. We have a speaker from Vietnam, another from Japan, one from Indonesia, and one from Ethiopia. So I think we're going to get an interesting perspective on the question which we are talking about today. And it's really that the realization is beginning to dawn more and more, particularly on the decision makers of the world, that the foods, that the transformation of food systems is now being recognized as a significant part of the solution to the climate crisis. And at COP28, with the adoption of the Leaders' Declaration on Food Systems, this has placed it squarely on the global agenda. We've spent a lot of time today, and we usually do, talking about energy. But agriculture, forestry, and related activities are responsible for about 25% of global emissions. And frankly, it doesn't get sufficient airtime. And coming from Africa, it's well known that in many developing countries, agriculture provides a huge number of jobs. And in many countries, over 50% of the employment comes from agriculture. And also in poorer countries, agriculture accounts for a huge proportion of the GDP. In many countries, up to 25% of the GDP. So what is it that we want to focus on today? We want to talk, firstly, we want to see whether we can examine the question of food security in a situation where the climate is going to change. What we've heard today is that there is already climate change and climate will change. How do we adapt adapt food production, and what are the current technological innovations that are being investigated for this purpose? Secondly, how do we reduce emissions from the food system? Because currently it's a net emitter. Can we turn that around into becoming a net absorber of greenhouse gases rather than a net emitter? We're going to start off with Nguyen Thuy, who is the Director General of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in Vietnam. I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to say thanks to the ICEF organizer to inviting me here to join the meeting and sharing information from the Vietnam for the transitions towards the green, ecological, sustainable agriculture in Vietnam. First of all, there's the first slide showing you the very short summary of the profile of Vietnam. Here you can see all of the agricultural product was produced by Vietnamese farmer we can find in all of the region, all of the city in Vietnam. So why agriculture is play an important role in the country economy? In 2023, Vietnam agriculture, forest, and fishing sector accounted for the 12% of the country's GDP. Vietnam has become a major exporter of the agricultural product, accounted for the $53 billion in the 2023. The largest export market for the Vietnam is Asia, accounted for the 50%. China and United States are the Vietnamese major trading partners. It is now the world's largest producer of the cashew nut with 1/3 of the world markets and the second largest rice and coffee exporter. The country has the highest proportion of the land used for permanent crops, other primary export products including wood and wood product, vegetable and fruit, fishing, rubber, and other products. However, the agriculture sector facing challenging from climate change impact and market fluctuation. The four sectors are responsible for the 14% of the greenhouse gas emissions, which are significant and mitigating climate change and consequent impact, particular rice production accounted for the 46%. Greenhouse gas emission from the agriculture sector based on 5 main subsectors, including enteric fermentations, manure management, rice cultivation, and managed soil. The total greenhouse gas emission in agriculture sector was projected to continuously increase. Methane contributes the largest share, the total greenhouse emission from agriculture sector, followed by the nitrous oxide. The rice sector remains the largest emitter due to the extensive coverage of the wetland rice field, with 33% of the paddy field rice constantly subject to the methane intensive irrigated area. The nitrous oxide emission from the managed soil, driven by the escalating use of the nitrogen fertilizers to enhance the crop yield. Facing with these problems and challenges with a strong political will, as a COP26, Vietnam made a commitment to net zero mission by 2050. Vietnam also signed the pledge to reduce the global methane emission in 2030. The Glasgow Leader Declaration on the Forest and Land Use, and the global call to clean power transition. Vietnam aims to become a transparent, responsible, and sustainable food producer and supplier, meeting the food security and nutrition need of about 100 million Vietnamese people for export. At COP28, Vietnam endorsed the Emirate Declaration on the Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food System, and Action and Climate Actions. To address this challenge, Vietnam developed a comprehensive national for the transition in agriculture, such as Plan of Restructuring Agriculture Sector, the Strategy for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Development, the National Action Plan on the Food System Transformation in Vietnam. Central to these strategies are the integrating of nature-based adaptations and eco-friendly practice and enhancement of low-carbon measures throughout the production, processing, and trade process for the key agriculture supply chain. For the spread ahead with the green growth and enhance climate resilience among the smallholder farmers in the Mekong Delta, Vietnam approved the project Sustainable Development 1 million hectares of the high quality and low emission rice cultivation associated with green growth in Mekong Delta by 2030. These efforts are bolstered by collaboration with international organizations such as UNDP, FAO, World Bank, CGIAR members, various NGOs, international research institutions, scientists, and experts. However, we still face with many difficulties and challenges. Vietnam agriculture is still the second largest source of greenhouse gas emission in Vietnam, particularly rice production, accounting for the 50%. We also have the small-scale farming and lack of resources, no supportive policies for the farmer, And also the carbon market and low emission food market mechanism has not been established. The farmer who adopts the emission production process earn higher income, but due to reduced inputs and increased productivity and quality. However, it's still challenge. The farmer joining this program is not having a real motivation and not added value from the reduction of the emission. Therefore, the government of Vietnam is clearly aware of the need for the close collaboration between the countries and cross in the food and food system to create supplying chain in the entire system to effectively implement its long-term and ambitious plan. Vietnam looking forward to strengthen collaboration with the international partners, including the establishment of the food system transformation partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thuy. I really find your talk very interesting. It's quite clear that we're listening to somebody who's at the coalface of policy making on this question in Vietnam. And I think that comes through very, very clearly, and you give us a wonderful touch and feel of the reality. Our next speaker is Toshiharu. He will be speaking in Japanese if you want to prepare your ear gadgets. He's the Director General, New Technology Frontier and Multidisciplinary Unit, including collaborative zero emissions in agriculture, forestry, and fisheries fields at the Technology Strategy Center of NEDO. It's a pleasure to have you, and we look forward to hearing your words.
I am from NEDO. I am Uki from NEDO's Innovation Strategy Center. So I'd like to talk about building sustainable food systems, how to enhance food security in Japan, how to respond to climate change. So what measures are in place? I would like to talk about those topics. So first, agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and food industries are facing the following challenges in Japan. Food self-sufficiency rate in Japan is around 40%. That is low. And farmers are being reduced in numbers, and they are getting older. And climate change and biodiversity impact from agriculture, they are the concerns as well. Therefore, agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and food industries need to improve productivity, and we need to reduce environmental burden. And with this in mind, after 25 years, for the first time, the basic act on food, agriculture, and rural areas has been revised. So this is looking at the revision points of this act. Number one, each person's food security is now positioned at the center of this act. The second revision point is about environmentally friendly food system to be established. This is a part of the basic principle of this act. Number three is to guide directions for agriculture production in a declining population, and relevant policies and programs are to follow. Environment-friendly food system needs to be established, and at the MAF, Sustainable Food System Strategy called Strategy Midori has been established. And then by 2050, the agriculture sector CO2 zero emission and 50% reduction of the chemical pesticides. These are one of the 14 KPIs in this regard. And then 2050 carbon neutrality and green growth strategy has also been established. And with this strategy, this sector is positioned as one of the important sectors, and the measures are being promoted in this regard, and relevant projects are to follow. So this is looking at NEDO promoting Green Innovation Fund projects. And in this project, carbon fixation technology development needs to be accelerated, and the forestry circulating usage needs to be promoted, and also blue carbon, the carbon sink, is another challenge we are taking on. So carbon neutrality and this sector's development are to be achieved at the same time. So we would like to improve the yield, and we are developing high quality, high functional biochar. And we are also developing wood-based isotropic large-scale cross-sectional structural members for the construction of high-rise buildings and other structures. And number 3 is the development of technologies for constructing seaweed beds in support of blue carbon efforts. This is another project I would like to introduce to you. This is to improve the carbon fixation, the productivity, and biomass development. And biomass obtained can be used for creating other materials, and direct air capture agriculture should be established under this vision. Next is about improving productivity. Smart agriculture and precision farming is one of the areas we are addressing. So we see the declining number of farmers, but still we would like to establish a system whereby food supply can be stabilized. So automation, information sharing, and also data usage. So these are the areas we are addressing in terms of smart agriculture. And also research and development is being promoted by the government, academia, and the private sector, and the MAF is working in this regard in terms of the data collaboration platform. So at the NEDO Innovation Strategy Center, we have disclosed Agri-Tech report, and this is just a reference for your reference. In Europe and in the United States, the ITO and farm machinery manufacturer and agrochemical companies are promoting precision farming, and they are also promoting controlled environmental agriculture, both of which aim to increase yields of high-quality crops and minimizing the use of materials. And bio-based fertilizers become more popular in order to reduce environmental impact. And this is about the reducing food loss in order to improve food security. So food loss reduction is recognized as an important challenge in achieving sustainable food system. By 2030, we'd like to reduce the food loss by half. And in order to achieve this market, a variety of measures are being implemented. And the relevant ministry are trying to develop technology to reduce food loss. And also smart food chain platform is being established. So in terms of reducing food loss, we have also announced this report at NEDO Innovation Strategy Center. For your reference, in the second paragraph, it says that there are high expectations for the matching of food supply and demand through the use of technologies that are difficult for individual companies to manage on their own, such as data platform and technology enabling dynamic pricing that links data on product conditions and other information during distribution. So finally, as conclusion, I would like to give you my summary. So once again, I would like to skip the top 3 ones because this is repetitive. Number 4 is NEDO has been working with companies and research institutions to implement various projects that contribute to carbon neutrality and promote cooperation between agriculture and the industry. And NEDO will continue to advance these projects while also taking international trends into consideration. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Toshiharu. That is fascinating. For some reason, I find it counterintuitive that Japan is so dependent for its basic carbohydrate food from on imports. And I also find it counterintuitive. Maybe that's just because I don't know enough about food systems, that the Japanese own production has reduced by about 50% just during my lifetime. Most countries have gone in the opposite direction. But what is most interesting is to hear about the work which NEDO is doing in this regard. And quite clearly, for a country like Japan, the work which NEDO is doing is quite important. You haven't spoken about what would happen as climate changes further to the challenges that the food systems already have in Japan, and maybe later on under questions you may want to comment on that. But let's move on now to Dejene Tezera, who is the Director of the Department of Agribusiness at UNIDO. He is, as I'd mentioned to you before, he's Ethiopian, and he is right now in Addis Ababa, and he's going to talk to us from there. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me join my colleagues who spoke earlier than me, and let's say thanking very much the organizers of the conference. So my presentation will be more on let's say the challenges and potential solutions for sustainable agriculture and sustainable food systems. So that is in general. So I go directly to my presentation. Next slide, please. And I start with some basic facts, which maybe all of you know, but it's better also to have a refresher. About 733 million people are chronically hungry last year, and about 2.3 billion people globally, that's about, let's say, 20% of the global population is food insecure. And then 280 million people are let's say, in a sort of life-threatening situation. And then main conflicts, main areas of, let's say, reasons for all this, let's say, food insecurity situation is conflicts, especially in the Middle East and in Africa, climate change, that means extreme weathers, and then, of course, the financial crisis and inflation and so on. And as mentioned before, about 30% of the global food produce is wasted or lost. So that is, and then agriculture contributes about 30% of the global greenhouse gas emission. So food security, just to summarize, comprises of the three dimensions. That is access. People must have access to food, and that food should be available, and then it should also be the nutritionally, they say, very good. And then also, of course, stabilization is necessary. That means the political and the economic situation of the country. Next one, please. Now, what are the drivers of the food systems in general? It's more demographic, as we mentioned. Population increase means people produce more food with less resources. The socio-economic situation, that is morely for access to food. That means we have to, food is available in most cases, let's say globally, there is enough food available, but people do not have access, so that is the socio-economic situation is important. The political situation, like the conflicts in Ukraine, which has affected the food systems in general and the food security in particular, especially in developing countries. And then, of course, the climate change, the extreme weather, which I mentioned. Next one, please. Now, this is the impact of climate change in food systems. It's a little bit an old data, about 2 years old. You can see most of the impacts of the climate change in food is affecting the southern part of the globe. That is mostly where developing countries are. That means it's mostly Africa and Asia, and then Latin America. That is what we have to consider. This is simply because it is extremely difficult for developing countries to mitigate the climate changes at the moment, though a lot of effort is being done. Next one, please. The scenarios of food security by 2050, especially regarding the sustainability, will be like this. There will be about 70% increase is required to feed the population, which will be about 10 billion people by 2050. And then most of the people, this of 10 billion will be mostly in Africa and Asia, where food insecurity is largest. Next one, please. Next. So the scenario for food security is one way is to increase production productivity, which is a better opportunity for developing countries as their productivity is less, while the productivity in developed countries has reached, let's say, a high level. So it has reached a plateau. There is no opportunity. Next one, please. So the other one is reduced consumption, especially the meat and animal products, because of the high amount of cereals consumed by livestock to produce food. And then, of course, to reduce post-harvest losses, that is reduction of consumption, increase of productivity. Next one, please. Now, the other school of thought on how to go into sustainable food systems is going into regenerative agriculture, where circular economy and agroecology become a prominent mechanism for increasing production and productivity, at the same time maintaining the sustainability part of it. That means reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And last, next one, please, is the innovation-based solutions. I think innovations is becoming critically important, as the existing way of business as usual might not be, let's say, sufficient to reach food security, especially in areas of sustainability. Next one, please. So how much does it cost to end hunger? I think we are working in UNIDO and FAO together, working on trying to estimate how much resources is required to let's say, to end hunger. There are 3 scenarios, and I'll give only 2 scenarios. The first one is by 20, let's say, getting about 500 million people out of poverty will cost, let's say, about $27 billion in addition to the existing, let's say, allocated resources. But if you go into 700 million people, it costs us about additional $100 billion are required. If we go into more, let's say, sustainable approach, where the cost associated in climate mitigation and adaptation, and then if you go into 2040, then we have a possibility of using about $10 billion for removing 500 million people from food insecurity into. And then if you go into 700 million people, it will cost about $21 billion annually. Next one, please. So these are the enablers of food security. Then with the calculation of this study shows that the low cost but high impact, let's say, interventions required are shown here. As you can see, the violet color shows that direct support to food insecure people is the most expensive, but also is easiest way to get people out of chronic hunger. But in the meantime, there are so many other things like irrigation system, the appropriate policy, the women economic empowerment, youth engagement, and an appropriate policy, and so on. Different kind of enablers have different cost things. So the study is trying to identify the low-hanging fruit, or let's say appropriate intervention depending on the situation in the country to achieve zero hunger. Next one, please. Then this is a future food systems. I think the circularity, we have been talking about it. So the existing system is a linear, where you use a material and then the non-recyclable waste is just disposed into the environment, but the reuse economy is partially, let's say, reusing the outputs as an input to another into the agricultural system. But the circular economy approach is more into recycling, production, and use. So we close the loop so there is no waste at all, especially in the food system, using the byproducts from food for different purposes. Next one, please. So the work of the UN is also extremely important for these things. So we don't have a lot of resources, but we try to support the member states in different ways. So FAO, as you all know, leads more into increasing production and the productivity, including sustainability, while WFP saving life, let's say distributing food for the most vulnerable people, and then also trying to build asset and resilience. And IFAD is more rural financing. And in UNIDO, we try to increase the resilience of people through creating, let's say, value, adding value to agricultural products, preserving food, processing food, trade, and ultimately reducing the post-harvest losses, which is mentioned before. Next one, please. So that is in my intervention, more general, the challenges and the approaches for increasing sustainable food systems in developing countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dejene. That was a most interesting macro perspective on the question, which I appreciate very much. And what stuck with me is your number that 733 million people are going hungry, something like that. And the other interesting thing I found in your presentation is that according to you, about 1/3 of the activities of this sector, broadly speaking, 1/3 of the emissions can be attributed to this sector. That's quite something. You also spoke about the need for innovation, and that's something that appeals to us. We are an innovation body after all, and I think that many people here will agree with you as far as that is concerned. You made almost a passing reference to cattle. Several years ago, there was one big hype about cattle and the impact of cattle production and cattle farming on greenhouse gas emissions and such things. May be useful under question time. You may want to tell us whether we should stop eating red meat. Would you be recommending that? Apart from health reasons, it may help us a lot. We've got one more speaker who is a food scientist, Joko Rubiyanto. He is with the World Food Forum on Youth. He's a member of the World Food Forum Youth Policy Board, and he's also with the Rice Foundation in Indonesia. And we look forward to hearing you.
Yep. Thank you. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here to talk about the vital topic on the role of young people in climate actions in the field of agri-food system. Yeah, more than ever, young people are stepping up in taking an actions role in the contributing to the sustainable environment. And what we can see is that currently more than 70% of young people are aware and concerned about the climate degradations. But at the same time, when we are talking about the food system, the young people are unwilling to work in agriculture sector. There are several reasons. First, it's just there is an assumption that working in agricultural sector is not as prospective as in other sector. The second is about what the research that they found is that the area of the residents, the young people tend to live in a lively city like Tokyo, where farming is not really happening here. And the third is about the gender inequalities, where in farming are mostly dominated by men. But at the same time, the agri-food system, we are facing a diverse challenges, from undernourishment to food loss and waste. Like what Dejene talked to us just now about the undernourishment, that more than 700 million people are affected of the undernourishment. But at the same time, 1/3 of food productions globally were wasted, according to the data from the UN FAO. So how is actually the young people, especially in the local context, could contribute to tackle this kind of issues? I would like to share to you a youth-led actions in Indonesia, specifically in Blitar, a province in East Java. So, yeah, this is the production process. But before it, I would like to tell you about the current state there. So in Blitar, they could produce more than 2.9 million quintals of pineapples per year. So pineapple is just really important for the people there, for the community. And most of them are working as the farmers and the fruit sellers. But the problem is that farmers tend to not harvest pineapple that are very small, that are ugly, that are uniquely shaped or just strange shaped. So they just let it down on the ground, and they didn't harvest it. So a group of young people, including myself, collaborated with the local university there. We're doing increasing the awareness, collaborating with local farmers, moms community, and also young people to produce this kind of products, the pineapple juice and the pineapple jam, made from the grade C. The grade C, we call it, is that like the lowest grade of pineapple that is not marketable in the market. So we convert it to a more economically valuable products. So this is the general productions processes, but this is actually not really optimized. That's why we collaborate the university in the local university, and we optimize this kind of process. It's a very simple science. So we convert the production process from this into this. So the difference is that while the moms community producing the pineapple jam, they do not need new materials. So they will use the waste or the scrap from pressing during the productions of pineapple juice. Why? It's because the waste or the scraps contains high in pectin, that it is actually the main materials to produce jam that make it sticky. Maybe this relates to what Dejene talked about, the circular process, not the linear. Besides, several actions in shifting the food consumptions of young people, because we were given a lot of choices. We were given a lot of processed food with high in sugar, salt, and fat. We know that the high consumptions of this kind of products could actually lead to non-communicable diseases. So together with Rice Foundations Indonesia, we collaborated with schools across Indonesia in several provinces in the main island to provide awareness for young people with the principle of meaningful youth participations and the peer-to-peer learning concept. So you can see from the picture is that actually the young people there, the students, are training their friends. So it's not us as the expert or just food scientists who train them, but it's kind of young people train their peers. And this kind of things is really impactful, with more and more young people in Indonesia are joining this kind of health and sustainable food awareness. And we also try to push and invite young people to join the youth advocacy on food labeling in Indonesia. And we had around more than 12,000 petitions signed, and the young people there could also speak up to the Ministry of the Health Indonesia to talk about their concerns about this kind of conditions. The last things I would like to say is that young people are in the front line. The future, planning the future is meaning planning the young people's life. So bring the young people to the table in discussing about sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that interesting perspective on young people and their attraction or lack of attraction to the agricultural sector. We do have time for questions or comments from the audience, and I'm going to give an opportunity for that. But perhaps before that, I'm tempted, Thuy, to come back to you because Vietnam has got 1 million hectares of rice, sustainable rice. I don't have the technical term for your program, but 1 million hectares sounds a lot to me. And maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what is that program all about? Is it happening? Is it being planned? And what's the aims of that?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. As you know, in Vietnam, we have the large area of growing for rice. And we have the 3.9 million hectares for rice growing area. And it's almost accounted for the southern part. And 94% of the rice export came from the south. So the 1 million hectare project for the reduced emission is built for the 12 provinces in the Mekong Delta. And to join this project, for the first period, this is when we come to 2025, we will trying to set up for the 180 hectares. And then up to 2030, there's 1 million hectare with low emission and high quality and high productivity rice. And for now, Vietnam implement for the 3 seasons of rice, with the first 5 provinces involved in this project, with very many supportive from the different international organizations and experts from the IRI, from different international institutions. And as a first result, what we got from our report, it is showing that we apply different practice, eco-friendly practice that we call 1 must 5 reduce. This is using one certified seed, but reduce applying pesticide, reduce seed rate, showing, reduce applying the chemical fertilizer, reducing the water, and reducing the food, the loss process in processing. So in this, the farmer engaging in this product will be applying for the all eco-friendly practice. And for the first 2 seasons, the report was showing that it's almost increasing the added value about 30% for farmers. And we can reduce the the seed ratio from 140 kilogram per hectare up down to the 60 kilogram seed per hectare. And we also reduce about twice of the applying for the pesticide, and reducing about 20% of fertilizer, nutrition fertilizer. So this is really bringing the benefits for the farmer. But however, for the recent stage, the farmer is not gaining much, whatever is calling emission reduce, because we do not have really the right calculation, how we can make sure that this is a right and verify data. And we also have to build up the trademark for the low emission rice, the low carbon emission rice. So hope that after the first stage of the 180 hectare up to 2050, we can expand it for the 12 provinces in the Mekong Delta up to 2030. And after those projects, we will move to the extension program to spread out for the whole of the rice area growing in Vietnam. Because this is really important, because the rice production in Vietnam is accounting almost for the 50% of the emission emitting.
Thank you.
So if we succeed with the rice production, we can succeed to the another crop.
Wonderful. That's very interesting. I can see many of us in our shopping habits in the future looking for low emissions rice on the shelves. But let me, before I allow all of you to say additional things, there may be any questions or even comments from the audience. If Ismail doesn't say anything, I will be absolutely surprised, especially on this topic. Come on. Yeah, go. I know you have something.
I think that it is true that in many countries the problem of young people not wanting to be farmers is present. But that is because an image of farming as it existed in their parents' and grandparents' day. There is now in a number of cities where density is high, and that's true in most developing country cities, there is now a movement towards doing vertical agriculture, doing glass houses. And that kind of work is work that relies on technology and management, and is something that can attract the young people and can keep them in working with the natural environment as well. So I think it is quite true that the old-fashioned with the hoe in the field and so on is not going to attract young people who have been educated even at university level, high school and university level. But there are new avenues for that, especially tied with the ideas of the rapid urbanization that we are witnessing, for example, in places like Africa, where cities are growing very fast, and where therefore the opportunities for different kinds of farming lend themselves. And I would think it'd be good to hear from our panelists on that.
Does anybody want to respond to that? Joko?
Yeah, it is interesting to promote agriculture to young people with the regards of technology. But at the same time, I would like to share you, it's kind of a personal story. I was raised in a village and my father is a farmer. And most of the people in my village are farmers. But the young people decided to go or do urbanizations to the city rather than stay in the village to work as a farmer. Is that farming is quite dynamic. It also relates to the climate change that we are facing. So that's, I think it's the technological advancements, it's important, but the additional things that we need to care about is about the capacity building for the rural farmers, especially regarding how to farm that is climate resilient, so that it could also attract young people, that farming is, although it's dynamic, but there is always a solutions that can be done to fix this kind of issue.
Thank you. Did I see a hand? I didn't see another hand. There's a question. There's a hand over there.
I'd like to make a comment. This is a very interesting issue about young people in farming. And in India, we see this problem as well. And we formed an organization called Future Agricultural Leaders of India. And we give training in rural schools, a little bit in urban schools as well. And we also run camps where the students present with their innovations. And the students get very excited. Not all of them become farmers, but sometimes they teach their parents how to farm better, which itself is very useful. Some of them become farmers. Some of them enter other agribusinesses. And I think we can bring about a change by organizations such as that.
Thank you very much. We have an online question here to Thuy. It says, if you consider I'll just read it the way it's written. If you consider to introducing CDR technology to your country, what kind of CDR technologies could be fitting in Vietnam right now?
This is about CDR. Okay. Well, this is really the overall of the questions, but I think this is important things. The government is now investing in the capacity building for the whole structuring, and for the CTR, I think this is also how to say it. This is. But this is CTR where we are putting, or what?
I can't pretend to understand the question myself.
I think so.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I thought what we should do is I'd like to give all of the speakers an opportunity to comment on what each other have said. I promised them this in our preparatory session earlier, that I would give an opportunity for that. And could you also use the same opportunity to make your concluding remarks? And perhaps, Dejene, we can start with you, since you were, if you could make your concluding remarks and whatever else you may want to say about, comment on what others have said.
Yes, I think, thank you very much. It was very interesting, let's say, panel. What is very interesting is a question raised by one of the colleagues. They use the youth employment in rural areas. That is how to continue, let's say, agriculture. As one of the participants asked, how to keep young people in rural areas. I think that is very, very good. The future of agriculture also depends on youth. Instead of young people migrating to urban centers, it is always good to remain in rural areas if there is an opportunity for young people to get an off-farm jobs. That is what we try to do. For example, in agro-logistics, not necessarily all the young people should be farmers, but there is a lot of agribusiness activities like agro-logistics, digital solutions for agriculture, let's say agro-processing, marketing, input supply, or veterinary medicine supplies, and so on. All these opportunities, together with their innovative nature of the young people, can transform the agricultural system and the food security in rural areas. But the traditional agriculture, as we know it, is not possible anymore because of the fragmentation of the land itself. So the next generation will have less land. So there must be innovation to produce more with less. And all the effort should be made, investment in young people and in technology and innovation.
Thank you. But perhaps if more and more young people do not get involved in agriculture, that innovation will not come. It's likely to come with young people. Let's go on. I'd like to call on Toshiharu, if you have any comments to make.
Thank you. Earlier, there was this mention of digitalization, and I totally agree with that. Leveraging data fully, so that in a pinpoint fashion, you can spray chemicals, and also using smartphone applications, you can actually forecast yield. For example, that's possible. And I think that has an affinity to the young people. They will like that idea. So we should communicate that. Now, we need young people to be attracted to agriculture, and making profit is a very important aspect as well. Therefore, precision agriculture is something we need to leverage so that we can reduce the needed resources and at the same time have high yield at the same time. That would be good. And in relation to that as well, in terms of educational contents, it has to be enriched, and agricultural universities need to incorporate such elements in their educational programs, and that is already done in Japan as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Joko.
Yep, it's pretty interesting talking about the lack of, the interest of young people in working in agriculture. But things that I also missed to say is about the overconsumptions that we are facing, especially for young people. We were given a lot of choices, like the processed foods. Like we found while we are doing some investigation in the supermarket, we bought several milk products. But the reality is that in the ingredients, the first word that we found is that maltodextrin, not milk. So it basically shows that in one bottle of that products, it contains higher sugar than milk. It's actually a big issues that we face for young people especially. That's why I urge, especially government, maybe from several countries here, also to my government in Indonesia, to really track and also maintain this kind of issues, especially in the food labeling, so that young people is not misunderstood about what they consume, so that they could have a good and healthy diets. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thuy, do you want to have a last word again?
Yeah, I think the food system and the food transformation system is really challenging for the developing countries and it is really related to the climate change and also the greenhouse gas emissions. And I think the important thing is how we can make technology available for the smallholder farmer in those countries. And we hope that the technology can bring the more benefits and also has the impact on the greenhouse gas emission in the agriculture and also in the food sections. And the same thing issue in Vietnam is also the young people engaging in the agriculture is become less and less. And we hope that there's a more activating policy from the government to encourage and activate young people to engage in agriculture with the model technology, so we can bring more bring people, young people to the agriculture. And I think what we need now is innovations, what we need. And now, more than ever, the time we can come together for the practical solutions to resolve the problem, and also for our bright future, and where the food security will be ensured and environment is protected, and for green and for cool earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It brings us neatly to the end. It's quite clear that the food system sector is not getting the airtime that it needs when we talk about tackling the climate issues. There's no doubt about it at all. And I've been wondering why this is the case. And perhaps one of the reasons could be that we have underestimated the food industry. And the leaders of the global food industry are in the United States. I mean, that's where the big sort of big food revolution took place in the 60s and the 70s and the 50s also, in those sorts of places. And I came across an interesting statistic recently. And in the US, big money gets spent on lobbying. It's not the only country in the world, but I happened to read something which was referring to the US. And so the oil and gas lobby puts a lot of money into lobbying, the oil and gas sector. The defense sector, of course, puts a lot of money into it. But the agricultural sector is the leader in lobbying spend in the United States. They spend more money than oil and gas or the defense industry on lobbying. And that may be one of the reasons why these things don't feature as much in the climate discussion globally. And I think that our speakers have all spoken about innovation, and we will look at this as ICEF and see whether we can perhaps scale up our own attention to the sector. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attention.